My point for bringing this up is that when a meme gets started, it's not so much surviving and propagating because of how it is. It's surviving and propagating because of how we as human beings are. We tend to latch on to ideas and hang on to them longer than we should and come up with ad hoc justifications for them. And that's how that kind of meme gets started. Right?
Right. It's a little bit hard to reach far enough back in time to ask, like, how Judaism got started, for instance. I mean, we can come up with ideas, but
before
there are a lot
Judaism,
of more recent stuff.
But before Judaism, there were previous sets of magical, supernatural beliefs and mystical beliefs, right, that were all built on, ultimately, if you trace them back, you're going to find some guy coming up with an explanation for something and then being forced, but when his original explanation doesn't pan out, being forced to come up with ad hoc explanations to keep the idea in play. And that once that ball gets rolling, it just accumulates more and more and more and more made-up justifications. And in the case of religion in particular, it's justifications that reach outside of the realm of daily experience into an invisible supernatural realm where anything goes. Any of that making any sense?
Yeah, that makes plenty of sense. And I guess it makes more sense sometimes to look at things like Mormonism or whatever that came about so recently that we can...
Yeah, I was going to bring up Mormonism because, I mean, first of all, I really enjoyed the South Park episode about Mormonism, even though I've read some convincing case that there are some ways that it misrepresented the religion. But nevertheless, I mean, there are some really flimsy elements to that story. Like, I mean, there's these golden plates that nobody can verify they ever saw. But in Mormon theology, there's also these ideas that they put out there that, like, okay, well, there are a bunch of guys who just happened to become church elders. But before that, they signed a piece of paper that said, yeah, I saw the golden plates, or at least I saw, like, the angel taking them away somewhere. And they, showed up way after the fact.
But if you're looking for the beginnings of religious memes, Mormonism isn't a good place to look. I mean,
True.
They didn't make up the idea of gods and angels and supernatural, religious things. Those ideas were already in play. That Mormonism was just the latest spin on a bunch of ideas that have been around since forever.
Yeah, it seems like Mormonism was a situation where you just had a perfect storm of pre-existing ideas like that, a really charismatic person surrounded by some really credulous people, and that sort of got it going.
That'll do it.
I do have one quick comment when you mentioned, if you don't mind, on converting people. I've never had any luck using logic or emotion, but I have done it on a moral basis.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think that people are the Jesus story. If you really present it to people, the morality doesn't make a lot of sense. And I've actually had one person really question their beliefs in Christianity based on the sort of the nonsensical kind of vicarious redemption aspect of Christianity, and it really took root with them. So I've actually had success in that.
Okay. Well, I guess I've always kind of lumped that approach and the emotional approach together, because when you go after the underlying morality, what you're doing is you're trying to evoke a reaction from the believer that, oh my gosh, I don't want to be a person that believes that thing, because that would be bad. To me, it's the same kind of thing, but I don't know where I'm going with this.
Right. Well, I mean, but one of the reasons that it's not necessarily a bad thing to do this is that, religion gets away with it because it's effective. And if you find the emotional appeal that works for you, feel free to push that advantage.
As long as you're
being honest.
Yeah, ethically, I think you should not be using emotional appeals unless you actually are pretty darn objectively, rationally certain that the viewpoint that you're promoting is accurate. you shouldn't be using emotional appeals for stuff you can't prove, which is what religion does.
I hope you don't mind me bringing it up, Jeff, but how dare you say that I deserve to be tortured forever? You got to admit that is a bit of an emotional appeal.
Absolutely, no, and that's why I said there's a place for that thing, right? That is attempting to get the Christian to realize that they're not really the nice person that they think they are.
Yeah.
If they really look at what the implications are of their beliefs. And yeah, I'd consider that emotional appeal. Thanks for calling, Matt.
All right.
All right. Thanks, guys.
See you later. Next up, we have Chris in Seattle, Washington. Hello, Chris.
Hello.
Hey.
My question was, what do you guys think about the statistics and not polls, but tests that have been done of life expectancy of non-believers versus people of faith, I guess?
There are negligible differences as far as I understand. Do you have any particular numbers there?
No, that's my point, is that there is no difference. That if you had a group of atheist, logical, reasonable people living a certain expectancy, wouldn't you expect to see the illogical, the group of non-rational people not surviving as long? I mean, is that God's hand coming down and keeping them up to par with the logical, reasonable group?
Well, you remember that the explanation for that is going to be, well, we're Christians and we're not concerned with this life. It's, it's the next one that matters.
Right, but wouldn't you see that them not living as long because they don't really, Christians they're planning on having an afterlife?
Come on, Christians get the benefit of modern medical technology, and most of them, unless you're talking about fringe groups like Christian Scientists and Jehovah's Witnesses and things. I would like to see some statistics on them, the specific groups that spurn modern medical technology. So I don't necessarily agree with your base assumption that we would expect to see a difference.
Yeah, I mean, if you were proposing this as a scientific hypothesis, you'd have to make like a really solid case that you would expect to see that and why, and you'd have to test not only how long people live, but also whether they conform to the original expectations you were talking about.
Are there statistics on people with, never mind religion and rationalism, are there tests, studies on people of very low IQ and very high IQ to see if there's a life expectancy difference there? Because I'd be surprised if there was.
All right. I didn't know if, so to rationalize that from, I guess, looking at it from, a person's of faith point of view, is it sort of just like a part of their brain that is irrational and they're able to think logically about everything else except that little small aspect of their life?
I think that's what, I don't know if that's from their perspective, what they would say, but that is what a lot of atheists say, because it's what we observe.
Yeah, and, I try not to get in the trap of thinking that religious people are in some way stupider than atheists, because, there are all kinds of people who are smarter than me and yet happen to hold this belief that I think is completely wrong.
And if I could clarify that, that's not what I was saying.
Yeah.
Right.
But
that's the basis. That's the basis of Chris's idea, right? That we might expect to see a difference because, hey, these are irrational people. Shouldn't they be doing all kinds of irrational things that get them killed early? Right. Well, I'm not aware of any big difference, and I'm not really surprised that there isn't a big difference.
Which kind of goes back to your point that if we could have statistics on religious communities that spurn modern medicine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Well, thanks for your time.
You're welcome. Right. Thanks for calling,
Thank you
Chris.
for calling. Coming up next, we got Diane in San Francisco. Hello, Diane.
Hi.
Hi, Diane.
Hi.
How are you guys?
Good.
We're good. You?
All right, a little nervous because what I wanted to talk about was that I wouldn't consider myself a theist, really. I've definitely been anti-religion for a really long time, but sorry, I'm getting an echo.
Oh, sorry, that happens sometimes. Just try not to listen too much.
Yeah, turn off your TV sound.
It is.
Okay.
Okay.